The auditorium buzzed with anticipation, a low hum of whispered conversations and shuffling feet. Bright lights swept across the stage, reflecting off polished floors and towering speakers. It was another night of dreams, some fulfilled, many broken. Backstage, contestants paced nervously, clutching numbers pinned to their shirts, each hoping to become the next unforgettable act. But in the farthest corner of the waiting area sat a girl no one noticed. Her name was Alina. She wore a simple, faded dress, the kind that had clearly been washed too many times. The hem was slightly uneven, and her shoes were scuffed, barely holding together. Her long, dark hair was tied into a loose braid, strands falling softly around her face. In her hands, she held nothing, no instrument, no lucky charm, no phone to distract her thoughts. Just silence. Every few seconds, she pressed her fingers together as if playing invisible keys, her lips moving slightly, counting beats only she could hear. Number 147. A voice called out. Alina flinched. That was her. She stood up slowly, her heart racing so loudly she was sure others could hear it. As she walked toward the stage entrance, a few contestants glanced at her, not with admiration, but curiosity, and a hint of doubt. Is she even ready? One whispered. She doesn't look like much, another muttered. Alina heard them. She always did. But she didn't stop. The stage manager gave her a quick look. You're up. Just walk straight, stand on the mark, and tell them what you'll be doing. Alina nodded, her throat too tight to speak. Then the curtain parted. The lights hit her like a wave. For a brief moment, she froze. The crowd stretched endlessly before her, a sea of faces blurred by brightness. The judges sat at their desk, calm, observant, powerful. This was it. There was no turning back. She stepped forward. Hello, one of the judges said gently. What's your name? Alina swallowed. My name is Alina. How old are you, Alina? 16. And where are you from? She hesitated for a moment. From a small village, far away. A few murmurs rippled through the audience. Simon leaned forward slightly, studying her. All right, Alina, and what will you be doing for us today? I will play the piano. Simon raised an eyebrow. Okay. Do you have any formal training? A pause. No, none at all. Another judge asked. Alina shook her head. I learned by myself. The audience exchanged glances. Some smiled politely, others looked skeptical. Simon leaned back in his chair. All right, whenever you're ready. Alina turned toward the piano placed at the center of the stage. It was beautiful, sleek, polished, glowing under the lights. She approached it slowly, almost reverently, as if afraid it might disappear if she moved too quickly. When she sat down, she didn't start immediately. Instead, she closed her eyes. And for a moment, the entire room felt still. In her mind, she wasn't on that stage anymore. She was back home. A tiny, dimly lit room with cracked walls and a leaking roof. A broken wooden table in one corner. A thin mattress on the floor. And in the center of it all, a makeshift piano. It wasn't real. It was drawn. Keys sketched carefully onto a piece of cardboard, taped together from old boxes. The black keys were colored with charcoal. The white keys were faded and worn. That was where it all began. Alina's mother used to hum songs while cooking, soft melodies that filled their small home with warmth. Alina would sit nearby, tapping her fingers on the table, trying to follow the rhythm. We don't have a piano, her mother would say gently, smiling. But music lives here. She would tap Alina's chest. After her mother passed away, the house grew quiet. Too quiet. The silence was unbearable. So, Alina created her own sound. She found cardboard behind a market, brought it home, and spent hours drawing keys. At first, it was just a game, pretending to play songs she remembered. But slowly, something changed. She began to hear music. Not from outside, but from within. Her fingers started moving with purpose, pressing imaginary keys with precision. She would sit for hours, eyes closed, playing melodies no one had taught her. Her neighbors thought she was strange. Poor girl, they would whisper. She's lost in her own world. But Alina didn't care, because in that world, she wasn't poor. She was free. Back on the stage, her fingers hovered over the real keys for the first time in her life. She took a deep breath. And began. The first note was soft. So soft that it almost disappeared into the air. But then came another. And another. A delicate melody unfolded, gentle and haunting, like a memory slowly waking up. The audience leaned forward, their skepticism fading into curiosity. Simon's expression remained neutral at first. But then, something shifted. The music grew. It wasn't just notes, it was a story. A story of loneliness, of nights spent staring at the ceiling, of silent tears no one ever saw. Alina's fingers moved effortlessly, as if the piano had always been a part of her. Each note carried emotion so raw, so real, that it wrapped itself around the hearts of everyone listening. The melody rose, swelling into something powerful. It spoke of struggle, of hunger, of cold nights, of dreams that seemed too big for a girl with nothing. And then, hope. A sudden change in tone lifted the entire piece, like sunlight breaking through heavy clouds. The music became brighter, stronger, filled with determination. Alina wasn't just playing, she was telling them everything. Without a single word, tears began to appear in the audience. A woman covered her mouth, her eyes glistening. One of the judges blinked rapidly, trying to hold back emotion. And Simon leaned forward, his usual sharp gaze softened, replaced by something rare, vulnerability. The final section of the piece was breathtaking. It built and built, faster and more intense, until it felt like the entire room was holding its breath. And then, silence. The last note hung in the air, trembling, before fading away completely. For a moment, no one moved. No one spoke. It was as if time itself had stopped. And then, the audience erupted, a standing ovation. People rose to their feet, clapping, cheering, some openly crying. The sound was overwhelming, filling every corner of the auditorium. Alina sat frozen at the piano, her hands still hovering over the keys. She hadn't expected this. She hadn't expected anything. Slowly, she stood up and turned to face the judges. Simon didn't speak immediately. He looked at her, his eyes slightly red. That, he began, his voice quieter than usual, was not what I expected. Alina lowered her gaze. I mean that in the best possible way, he continued. You said you've never had training. She shook her head. And you've never played a real piano before. A small whisper. No. Simon let out a breath, shaking his head slightly. That's unbelievable. Another judge leaned in. Alina, that wasn't just playing. That was feeling. Where did that come from? Alina hesitated. Then she spoke softly. From everything I've been through. The room fell silent again. Simon looked down for a moment, then back at her. You know, he said, I've been doing this for a long time. I've seen thousands of performers. He paused. But very, very rarely, someone comes along who reminds us why we love music in the first place. Alina's eyes filled with tears. And you, he said, his voice breaking slightly, are one of those people. A tear slipped down her cheek. The audience cheered again, louder than before. Alina, another judge said warmly, you don't just have talent. You have a gift. Simon reached toward the golden buzzer. The crowd gasped. Alina's breath caught in her throat. He looked at her one last time. You deserve the world to hear this. And he pressed it. Gold confetti exploded into the air, raining down like a dream come true. The audience roared, louder than ever, as Alina stood there in shock, tears streaming down her face. She covered her mouth, unable to believe what was happening. This couldn't be real, but it was. Simon stood up, clapping, his expression filled with emotion. Welcome to the next stage, he said. Alina laughed through her tears, a sound so pure and joyful it made the moment even more powerful. For the first time in her life, she wasn't invisible. She wasn't the poor girl. She was Alina, a girl with a dream. And now, the world was finally listening.